All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Zoom with the Principal. So before we officially get started today, our topic today is anxiety, but before we officially get started, I am looking for a parent that is willing to serve on the district's DLAC committee and then be our local site representative for ELAC. This is especially if you are a parent of an English learner student. This is a really great role in a way that you can help out. The meetings, I think they happen like every other month, so it's not a huge time commitment. So if you were somebody that was like, I could, do a little extra and want to help out the school, this would be a great way to do it. That's not a huge time commitment. You can either email me if you're interested or Rupert Rosales. Rupert is at a district meeting today and isn't with us today, but he is the one that would give you all the information about this committee. So if you are interested in being a DLAC or ELAC representative, either let me know or let Rupert Rosales know, or both of us. That would work too. So had that a little announcement that I had to get out of the way first. But our topic today is anxiety. This is a topic near and dear to my heart. I don't have anxiety myself. I actually find that I'm probably one of the least anxious people in the world. Nothing really rattles me, but I do have two children who have anxiety. And so I am very familiar with what it's like to be a parent of a child that is suffering from anxiety and all of the frustrations that can come with it when you're like, oh my God, just get it together. Like, what's wrong? So this is something that I mentioned in my newsletter, this is probably our most prevalent mental health concern that we have amongst our students on campus. It is, really very common amongst teenagers. I have a lot of different theories about why that is, which if you guys ever wanted to talk about that, I'm sure I could talk about it forever, on all my different theories. But what we're going to talk about today is how, what is anxiety and how do we help our teenager through it? And both of our social workers here today, Amy Cruz and Yvonne Gunter, and I am going to turn it over to you guys. So welcome and educate us, please.
Awesome. Good morning, everyone. Let me go ahead and share my screen so you can see the slides. All right. Like Miss Davis said, my name is Amy Cruz. I'm one of our school social workers, and I'm here with Yvonne, Miss Gunter, and we're here to talk about anxiety today.
Sorry, I got bumped. So I have a little, it's not very, actually, it makes me kind of a terrible social worker, but the only way to rattle Miss Davis is when I pretend that I forgot it's Zoom with the Principal day.
that does give me anxiety when I'm like, she's like, wait, what are we doing?
Okay. So, when we talk about anxiety, I always want us to talk about ourselves first. And with any of these topics, it's so important that we are paying attention to ourselves, because parents, we don't do that often enough. And so the way I start this presentation is the same way I start a lot of my sessions with students, a lot of my classroom presentations. And it's really just about checking in with yourself. And the way we do that is we ask ourselves, and you could just kind of answer these questions for yourself in your head. On a scale from 1 to 10, just in general, how are you feeling? And when we're talking about how we're feeling, I want you to think about how you're feeling emotionally right now. Are you stressed? Are you relaxed because the kids are already at school? And then the other thing is I like to do a body scan. And basically what that means is I'm going from the top of my head all the way down to my toes to figure out where my tension is lying. A lot of times I'll notice that my shoulders are really tight. I just feel like some muscle tension. I just feel uncomfortable. And so I can always tell how stressed I am based on if I'm having those kind of, a tense jaw or just any sort of muscle tension for myself, or even maybe like butterflies in my stomach, things like that. So in general, question number 1, how are you feeling 1 through 10? The next question is, what has been worrying you lately? Is there anything specific coming to mind? Maybe it's your kiddo, maybe it's something in your family. Maybe this week is just super relaxed. There's nothing to worry about. What has been worrying you lately? Number 3, am I providing my body with its basic needs? Sleep, food, water, what else? Just very basic things. Like, it seems like such a simple question, but like, yeah, wait, I didn't sleep very much last night and I have not been drinking my water, and just being in tune with yourself and your body. So are you providing yourself with its basic needs? And what am I doing to bring myself joy today? This is a question that as adults, we don't really ask ourselves often enough. We take time to do things that bring ourselves joy. What is it for you? My joy when I get home from work, and it's so cheesy, is I get my little chihuahua and we lay on my bed and just hang out for like 10 minutes. That's like my joy at the end of the day. So for you, do you take time out to do something that brings you joy? And then the last question is, who is in your corner? Do you have people around you that are supportive? Who is that for you? And just making sure that you're not going through this journey on your own. So who is in your corner? Who's on your side? And again, these are just checking questions that I use with students all the time, because we don't ever really take the time to slow down and just think about what we're doing and how we're feeling. Next slide. So as David said, anxiety is our #1 referral for students, and it can be anything from just the stress of school to a full-blown anxiety disorder, which we'll get into a little bit more. And so this is something that is very near and dear to my heart, because I wish somebody talked to my parents about this when I was in high school. Because when I was in high school going through anxiety, I had no idea what it was. I had no idea how to manage it. My mom would just kind of tell me, like, you're fine, just keep going to school. Like, I don't really know what to do for you. You're being dramatic, things like that. And so for me, this is really important, because if we had the knowledge that I have now back then, I would have suffered with anxiety for a lot shorter of a time. And so for me, this is really important, because, I always tell people, like, I'm the expert in teenagers, but you're the expert in your kiddo. And so together, hopefully we can make sure that they're not only just surviving school, but also like thriving here. And so anxiety seems to be something that pops up for, a majority of our students, whether again, it's just like the stress of school, or it's all the way to like a full-blown anxiety disorder. So again, we're going to keep talking about ourselves. And one of the biggest ways that we learn to cope with stress is by watching our parents do it. So I want you to think about when you saw your parents stress when you were younger, what did they do to manage their stress? Was it something healthy? Was it something not healthy? Maybe it was alcohol, maybe it was food, maybe it was exercise and meditation. Like, what was that you watched when you were younger for your parents to manage their stress? I think of when I'm like handling my stress in a really unhealthy way, it usually has something to do with like bad food. And I have this complete memory of my mom being like super stressed out, eating Jack in the Box. Like that was like her go-to, right? And so I think about that. I'm like, wow, that was kind of what I was modeled. And that's kind of what I've assumed in my life that I try not to do. And so for you, how do you model your stress management? What is it that you do for yourself? And is it something that your kiddos see? So that's not a rhetorical question for Amy and Miss Davis.
You want to like jump in?
Yeah.
So I like my bad habit that I have that they definitely see is I eat way too much sugar. Like that's like when I get super stressed, like I'm like, give me the gummy bears by the bagfuls. And like that is not great. I would say I also, though, my like healthy way I manage my stress is to exercise every day and really try to make sure that I'm getting enough sleep. And like especially sleep as I've gotten older, like the sleep, I've gotten to the point now that I understand, like I will like not work out if I haven't gotten enough sleep, because to me, sleep is more important. And so really getting that and like making that emphasis for sleep is something that I do to manage my stress, and hopefully am modeling that for my kids.
Good. Have you ever seen your kiddo stressed eating gummy bears?
Yes, my daughter for sure. Yes.
And we were just talking about this morning, actually. I am the parent of very small toddlers. And sometimes I say to Yvonne, like, well, you're lucky because you get to like see like how your teenagers respond. And it's a little bit different for me because my kiddos can't outwardly say yet, like, oh, we noticed this about you. I definitely think I'm more of like a minimizer with stress and like a busybody. Like, I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. And eventually I'll just pretty much pass out, right? And not worry about it. So I definitely have room for practice. But I'm also listening to an audiobook, which is not about parenting, but I'm like interpreting it as a parenting book, which just this morning on my drive to work said, your job as a parent isn't to avoid the stressful roadblocks for your kids. It's really just to model how you're gonna respond, and your kids are gonna notice that. And that's actually really fitting for what we're talking about this morning.
Yikes.
In the chat, a parent said, disassociate with the stressful situation for a few minutes to catch my breath and my thoughts. That I love that. I have this, it's taped to my computer. I don't know if you guys can read it. It might be backwards, but it says pause. And like, basically it's like a reminder that when like things are like overwhelming and stressful, to take a minute to pause and take a deep breath and just like have a couple, like, and like just breathe. So yeah, love that.
I love that too, Ginny. I just realized for myself over the weekend, and this was random, but when I take photos, like I'm in photos, I forget to breathe. And I just noticed that about myself this past weekend because I was taking pictures with my family and I was like, why am I so out of breath? And it's something I just got that awareness of this past weekend is I forget to breathe.
That's a great self-awareness.
Like, what? I do that? Anybody else with how they manage your stress? And kind of the guide to this would be like, do you even acknowledge that you're stressed? Do you even realize it? My mom is the person in my life who doesn't filter anything she says about me. And she will tell me all the time, Yvonne, I can tell you're spinning right now. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're right. I am. It's like, I'm getting all these projects started. I'm just kind of like, maybe like you, Amy, that kind of busyness. And then she's like, you're not accomplishing anything. What's going on? And I'm like, if my mom hadn't stopped me, I just would go about it and not even like acknowledge that maybe I'm super stressed about something. Do you minimize it? Do you get help for it? Do you use coping strategies? Just a reminder, this is how our kiddos learn to deal with stress. When I'm super stressed, my kids will even say, Mom, do you want to go get boba? Like that's like their go-to when they know I'm stressed. I'm like, I don't know that that's, I mean, it's fun. We go and it's great, but you know, maybe it should be like, Mom, you look stressed. We should go for a walk. Maybe that should be the new instruction. Next slide, Amy. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but this is just one way to notice, like if you were to go, I'll go through some of them, but just to have that awareness, like, am I actually stressed? Am I feeling anxiety? You know, because I think for a lot of us, we would answer a lot of these and there's no like right or wrong answer, or how many you should be feeling right now. But this is just to like, again, bring awareness to what you're feeling. Like, do you feel swamped by your responsibilities and that things are piling up, that you don't have time to breathe, like things are not going right, having issues with sleep? You know, I actually had this thought yesterday, and this question kind of brought that to my mind is, do you feel like there's no time to spend with your loved ones? And I felt very frustrated with myself yesterday. I was like, what do I do with my time? Why do I feel like I'm like neglecting my kids and my husband and my friends? Like, what am I doing with my time? Like, I just felt very overwhelmed with not being there enough for other people. And I know for a fact that that's not like true, because I am, but I'm like, gosh, I just had this anxiety about it. Like, am I not being a good enough friend? Am I not being a good enough wife? Like, I just don't have time. I come home from work and I'm trying to like fix dinner, and it's just too much. And I noticed there was that tension in my shoulders, and I was having difficulty sleeping last night. You know, as a parent, like this is something that we are dealing with every day. You know, are you fatigued by the end of the day? I know for me, I don't wake up like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to take on the world. I'm kind of dragging a little bit. And I think it has a lot to do with just not taking the time to acknowledge that maybe I'm doing a little bit too much right now. Maybe I'm not taking good enough care of myself. So just kind of peruse this list, and, you know, do you feel like you're overcommitted? You got a lot on your mind. And I would venture to say that I think a lot of us have at least some of these thoughts on a daily basis, just existing and just being parents. Next slide. So I always like to remind people that stress inherently is not a bad thing. Stress is something that keeps us safe. It keeps us motivated. When you feel stressed, think back of like the hunter-gatherer days and there's a lion and you start to feel scared and you prepare to run or fight. That's a good thing. Our body is trying to warn us about something. Now, the problem with that is that we are not supposed to be stressed all the time. So now our society has kind of developed into this era of like, we're always stressed. If you think about these kids have to get up for school, be at school all day. Sometimes they go to work. You got to get homework done. Like you're constantly on the go. And I don't think our bodies are wired to be under stress 100% of the time. Like we're equipped to handle stress in like short bursts. And so although stress can be a good thing, it's the way that our body responds to any kind of threat, right? So it can be helpful, but if it's too much, it can be harmful. So it's like, how do we find that balance of like healthy stress versus unhealthy stress? Next slide, Amy. So when stress is good, think about things like deadlines. I get a little distracted and it's really hard for me to stay on task. So when I have a deadline, that gets me really focused. I'm more alert. I'm motivated to do it. I think it can like enhance my brain function and just like my ability to perform, right? I needed some of that stress. If I didn't have a deadline, honestly, there'd probably be a lot of things that would probably never get done. Like I would just sweep them under the rug and forget about it. It's like my mom always used to say that, like, you write your papers really well the night before they're due. Like that was always my, I've always used that timeline or deadline as motivation for me. So in that, right, it can, stress can protect me. It can raise my alertness. It can get me to be productive. So that's a positive side of stress. The negative side is when it just becomes overwhelming. A lot of times I'll see kiddos, particularly like seniors, just start to shut down. We start getting into like that senioritis. Like it's so much stress about life and school that they just are not motivated to do anything. It's like they have a million things to do and they can't get the motivation to do any of it. Their energy goes down. They're less focused. They're super distracted. It's like, how do we find this fine balance? And I think the next slide shows what that balance looks like, kind of like on a scale. So I'll show you the next slide. So this is what we call the stress curve. I don't know if you've seen my presentations before, you've probably seen the stress curve. And what I really love about this is it's exactly true. So the goal for ourselves, the goal for our kids is to be in this optimum stress area, which is the yellow portion of this, right? And basically that means that you are motivated, you got a little bit of push, but you're not completely overwhelmed. So it's like, you have things to do. If you're underloaded and you're in this green area, that's where like, I don't have deadlines and nobody's checking in. I've got no accountability. It's easy for me to get a little bit lazy and not do what I need to do. So that's like when kids are like too laid back. They're not really motivated to do much. That's not where we want them to be. We want them to be in the yellow. The problem is that most kids that we see are already in the orange. So we don't see them when they're in the yellow, like they're just kind of going about. We always see kiddos when they're already going into the orange and the red, right? When their stress is just like maxed out. And one of the things I always encourage students and parents is like, I want to see students before we're in the orange and red. It's really hard to bring them back from the red. So that's why it's so important to do things like those mental health check-ins, right? So you know where you are. Like, how are you feeling? How is your stress? What are you worried about? Like, those are so important because we get students in our office who are in the red and it is so like difficult to bring them back to de-escalate them. And so just thinking about that, like for you in your life, like what does yellow feel like for you? Right? Like what would be yellow? For me, yellow would be like, I have a caseload of kids, I'm getting my work done, I go home, I make dinner, all these things. That would be yellow. That's like, I have some pressure to do stuff, but I'm not completely overwhelmed. When I start getting like way too many cases and I've got a lot of stuff going on at work and I've got all these meetings going on, I start to kind of slide over and I don't function at my best. Like I am not functioning well when I'm in the orange or the red. And so just for yourself right now in your life, where would you say that you are? That's the first question on this curve. So for me, I would say right now I think I'm in the yellow. I think things are okay. I don't feel super overwhelmed. Last night I felt a little stressed. I kind of went over to orange a little bit, but in general, I'd say this week I'm probably yellow to orange. How about you guys?
I think I'm right on that dividing line between yellow and orange, where it could tip, but I'm trying very hard to stay in the yellow and take care of myself and make sure that I'm staying. And I guess like that's good. I'm very like aware of how I'm feeling and like right now, and so I'm doing everything I can to stay in the yellow.
Someone in the chat also says yellow orange. That seems to be a popular area right now.
Yeah.
I think I'm mostly in the yellow. My love language is quality time with my family and loved ones. And I think it definitely helps that we have a week off next week. And so I know I'm really looking forward to that. And that helps motivate me to stay, in the yellow.
Yeah.
I
Anybody
am
else?
orange.
Did you say you're in the orange?
Yeah, I have so much to do. I
Yeah.
have 2 kids with mental health problem, and they have anxiety. One have anxiety and one have ADHD. So
Okay.
I always have appointment for.
So you're busy and stressed about your children's well-being. That's definitely puts you in the orange. And hopefully you're taking care of yourself.
Yeah, I do exercise and meditation, but the more I do exercise, the more I cannot catch up with my work.
Oh, that balance, right? How do we find that balance?
Yeah,
Virginia.
yeah.
Good morning. So, unfortunately, I've learned that my life lives on the line of red and orange. So, when I'm in orange or yellow, I actually feel pretty good, which I must say I'm probably like Jenny, on the border of orange and yellow. So with me, the curve is a little different, and I find that I tend to stress myself out if I would be in the green, because I feel like I'm not getting things done. Or so I'm kind of, I've learned to go backwards, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like I'm only in green if I'm on vacation. Like I'm laying on the beach and like I have no worries. Like that's when I'm in green. But like that's not a like normal life. That's special time.
So Virginia, your baseline is way different than what the scale says, right? Like you're just living that orange.
Yeah. So it's interesting because hearing you talk about it, and I'm like, wow, like I'm off the chart here. Like my life, it just seems to be so much different, but everybody handles stress differently, I guess.
I think that's important to note also, is that like the stress is universal, right? We all know what stress is, but stress is also very individualized. Each of us experiences stress differently, which you pretty much just said.
I don't know who mentioned it, but I love that thought of like green for me is stressful. And I think I mentioned this before, is like when I go into summertime and I'm not seeing kids and my life is not chaos, I get into a bit of a funk. And it's too, there's nothing, like I don't feel like I'm helping or saving or doing, and it just is not good for my mental health at all. And I've tried like to, I've even gone as far as working summer school to avoid it.
Yeah, I feel the same exact way, Yvonne. When I'm in green, I actually feel myself going into a depression. I have to stay busy. I have to keep my mind busy constantly.
Yep. I guess like alone to my thoughts is not my happy place, maybe.
I think the culture does not allow us to have green anymore, right?
That's true. That's so true. So when you think about your own color, and then I want you to imagine, like, if you had to think about where your kids are right now, what do you think? And this could be an opportunity for conversation. Like what you think they're in, they might be in something completely different. Like I assume my kids are in yellow right now because I haven't heard anything, but they could very well be in red and I have no idea. So just wonder, maybe that's a good question to ask them tonight. Like, where are you on this? And just see how right you are. How in tune are you with how they're actually doing? Next sliding. This is just really briefly like acute stress versus chronic stress. Short-term stress, like I said, we're designed for that. These are like, just short incidents of stress, and then chronic stress is just like prolonged emotional pressure. I think we wrote in here about like the pandemic. Our kids were just under like this constant chronic stress that can really have a negative impact. So just know, where you are, where your children are, and that's what that is. Exciting. So I won't share too much, but I kind of come from the perspective of my own life as a teenager with very, very, very terrible anxiety, to the point that I, didn't finish high school when I was supposed to. I just couldn't get to school. We didn't really know what was wrong with me. My mom wasn't really understanding what was happening. I made all kinds of appointments with, therapists, and it just was not helpful. And I just really, really struggled. What I wish I knew at the time was that I would be okay, and that I would get better, and that it would be something that would kind of propel me into this new life. And what I wish I had was just some understanding and some knowledge about what I was experiencing. And I think a lot of times parents, including mine, and I've done this with my own kids, is we just kind of work off of this like toxic positivity, like, oh, you're fine, you're going to be fine, it's going to be great. And I wasn't. And I was very sick with anxiety for 12 years of my life. That, and I wish that somebody would have told me that and put me in the right direction. And that's why I'm so passionate about sharing like the signs and all of the things, because if your kiddo is going through anxiety, or even if you're going through anxiety, like, it is so valid. It is so scary. It's one of the things I would not wish on my worst enemy. And I just, want to always remind people that like, there is a way to get better, and it's not your destiny to feel that way, and for your kids too. And a lot of times kids have felt that way for so long, they don't even know what it feels like to feel relaxed or quote unquote normal anymore. And so for me, it's so important to just kind of spread this awareness, because, if 25% of our kids are experiencing some sort of mental health disorder, chances are one of ours might be. And so I always want to prepare you to, how do you have these conversations? I'm always so worried about, kids shutting down. Like when my kids come to tell me something, I'm so afraid that I'm going to say something wrong and they're not going to want to come to me anymore. Virginia, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I also wanted to add, if it's okay, that mental health stigma is very real. And without the understanding, we don't know how to give support. So making sure that we allow our children to know that it is okay to feel this way as well, and we can work through it, is very important, because a lot of kids would seek more help, or also get a better understanding if we also set that example for them.
One
Yeah,
of my go ahead.
I agree with you. I have two kids with problems, so I wish I know with now I take care of my grandkids. I wish I know with my kids, because I cannot.
Yeah.
Now I have to pay back to take care of my grandkids.
One of my sons who went through very, very terrible anxiety, he didn't go to school for 6 months. He has given me permission to tell other students that he struggled with anxiety. And it's so funny because like sometimes, his friends will come in and, I will tell them like, my son had really bad anxiety, and they're like, what? No way. And just that conversation, eliminating the stigmas of like, yeah, even your friends that you would never guess have anxiety. And so it's very powerful, and I'm very grateful that he lets me he's not, and I think maybe he's heard me talk very, candidly about my own anxiety. And so he's kind of become that too, of like, I don't really care, like it's cool, whatever. Especially with, like teenage boys, it's a hard thing to talk about. Like, it's okay that you're feeling this way. I have boys and girls, I have all students with, we'll find them in the hallway having really bad panic attacks and not really understanding what's going on. I always tell people like having anxiety was, I thought, the worst experience of my life. But having a child with severe anxiety is way worse. It's horrible to watch when you feel helpless. And me being a mental health expert and not knowing how to fix my kiddo was a very, very stressful time for me. And so, as much understanding as we can get, I think is going to be super important, because when it's your own kid, it's very difficult, especially if you don't understand exactly what's happening. And this isn't something that they make up. This is something It's super real, and just like any other illness, it's something that our students are dealing with. Next slide, Amy. I'm going to skip this one just for time's sake. Are you going to share this, Ginny? You'll share
Yeah,
this
I'll
out?
share it.
Okay. So think about being a teenager and how differently, and some of us are younger than, or some of you are way younger than me. And just like, what were your stressors growing up? And I think about mine were kind of silly. Like, I don't know that I had the same stresses that our kids have today. Like when I applied to get into San Jose State, I just got in. It wasn't like a thing to like compete or not get into, like I just went to college and that was the end of it. I didn't have social media, so I wasn't constantly comparing myself to these unrealistic beauty standards, right? I wasn't getting bullied on the phone. You know, there was all kinds of stress, but I just feel like it's this other level for our kids right now. And I never even pretend to understand what they're going through, but they're stressed about their families. They're stressed about this culture of achievement and having to know what they're going to do with their whole lives, and conflicts with their friends, and they're competitive about everything. They're completely overscheduled. You know, not a lot of kids have downtime. Not a lot of kids have, you know, can share with me what they do for fun or how they relax or how they cope with stress. They're just so busy all the time. I guess social media, I don't know why I put lack of sleep on the device, probably because I wasn't sleeping. I don't know. But just really thinking about, like, for you, what do you think is your child's greatest stress right now? Actually, I want to hear this from you. What do you think your child's greatest stress is right now? Amy.
Grades,
Grades,
work, schoolwork.
schoolwork, and grades. I'm
I-
gonna assume.
Go ahead. Oh, well,
No, go ahead.
I mean, with my son, I mean, my daughter's away in college, and so I think her stress is like, you know, school and keeping on top of her classes and all of that. For my son, he started high school this year, and honestly, he seems to be doing pretty well. The transition and the adjustment was way better than I thought it was going to be. I was super stressed about it. But you know, I think I think some of you are aware, my mom passed away last week. And so I think he's stressed about me. I think he's like seeing like what I've been going through, and I think he's worried about me. So, which is, I don't want him to worry about me, but you know.
Whoever put AP history, that is real.
Yeah.
Grades, need help to participate in cross country. That's real too. Yeah. And this is another fun one of like, what is your guess versus what is the reality? And I don't know that we'll ever be able to figure that out because I don't know how honest our kids are with us. But I would wonder if my kid's stress is what I think it is, or if it's something that I'm not even aware of. I can't see that. Oops. I lost the presentation. Hold on.
Oh, that might have been my fault.
Did you? No.
Okay, there it is. You got it?
I can't find you.
Oh, did you click on something on your screen?
There
Go
you are.
press
I
zoom.
did.
Okay. Sorry, guys.
Oh, next slide, please. Sorry. Okay. This one wasn't actually this week. This was like a this week last year, but these are just quotes from kids, and these are real. And we can come up with a million of them that we've heard, you know, recently. Like, I can't sleep. Once I'm alone in my room, the thoughts come flooding in. There are so many of them. I can't even grab onto just one. I have this kiddo in my mind from yesterday who was just like, I cannot function today. I am just completely overwhelmed with my AP calculus class. Like, I can't function. Like, she's like, I think about it all the time. I think about it at night. I think about it before I go to bed. I'm never going to get caught up. When asked what brings them joy, the student replied, the joy will come when I am an adult, a working adult making money. I don't have time for joy. And it's really hard to shatter someone and let them know that, like, it's also stressful when you're a grown up. You know, if they're holding on to, you know, they're just like getting by to get through and get to this like really awesome adulthood where you make money and all this stuff, I would be afraid they would be disappointed. And I really want them to enjoy the present moment. And a lot of times with anxiety, you just don't have the ability to do that. Hi, Miss Gunter, not sure how much longer I can hang on. I was doing so good and hadn't cut myself in over a year. Today, it's all I can think about. I told my mom how stressed I was feeling, and she literally said, suck it up. This is one of the referrals from last year. 4.0 student has missed 5 consecutive days of school. Social worker called and told that she's been having panic attacks. She has not turned in one assignment since school started. These are all very real scenarios from our students. And this is just like the tip of the iceberg of what we see. And it breaks my heart every day, like the things that these kids go through, and we still have the expectation that they're just gonna like do school. When you're in survival mode, which anxiety puts us in, it's very difficult to focus on something like school. Next slide. So these lists are always difficult because a lot of the symptoms can get confused for just like normal teenage behavior. So what I always say is like, if you're seeing a lot of these together, then there's likely a problem, right? And you are always welcome to reach out to Miss Cruz to assess your kiddo, to discuss this, to consult about it. If you're not sure, if you have any questions, like we are always open to have that discussion because we really want to, be beside you as you go on this journey of parenthood. And some of the things to look for, again, irritability and moodiness, that could be, just normal teenage behavior, but I'm always looking for a change in behavior. Like, were they this like bright kiddo and then all of a sudden they're like falling into this irritability and moodiness? Are they still doing the fun things that they used to do? Or are they withdrawing? You'll see kids who like, oh, I used to love to skateboard and play my guitar, and now they don't want anything to do with it. It doesn't even feel fun anymore. That would be a red flag for me. Expressing worries and complaining, like a lot of complaining. This is hard, this is too much, like that kind of language. Excessive hostility and avoidance towards family. And again, this is like, sometimes it's just a normal part of teenage development where they like kind of isolate in their rooms. But again, looking for that dramatic like behavior change, like were they coming to the dinner table and all of a sudden they're not showing up anymore? Notice if they're fidgety, if you notice they're giving up, their sleep habits. We talk about teenagers and sleep all the time, and unfortunately we can control that our kids go in their room, we can control that they don't have their devices, we cannot control when they fall asleep, how much they're sleeping. We just really have to support that, model that. There's no way we can force them to sleep as much as they need to, which should be, what do you say, Amy, 8 to 10 hours? What would you say for a teenager?
Yeah, 8 to 10 is exactly what I would say.
I wonder what your guess would be, is how many of them actually get that.
The kids I talk to, I think, is much lower because I talk about sleep a lot.
Do you ever hear them like having like bragging about it? Like, I got 2 hours last night. Like, it's almost like a brag item. Like, oh, I can function on 3 hours of sleep. And like, for me, it's like, there's nothing more important than sleep.
I actually am hearing that less and less. And I know parents, or if you're aware, if you saw it on back to school night in our main office, our main hallway, we have this bulletin board where she changes it every month, where there's a different question and kids can put up Post-it notes, and where they put their responses. And in the beginning of the school year, I don't remember exactly what the question was, but it was something about like, how do you manage stress or something like that. And I was impressed that there were like quite a few Post-it notes on there where they were talking about get enough sleep. And I was like, yes, like we're getting through to them. They're listening to us.
I know. Maybe one day we can build in a nap hour here. Crying, sadness, here's a big one. Feeling sick before going to school. Sunday night, you notice, oh, they maybe have a tummy ache, but always being sick, but not being able to name what that sickness is. Or maybe you've taken them to the doctor and the doctor's like, everything seems fine, but your kiddo's always sick or has a headache, or maybe in some other way trying to avoid coming to school. School anxiety is very real. Their appetite, has there been a big change in their appetite? Eating more, eating way less? Just, again, things to look out for with your kiddo. Next slide, Amy. Okay, parents, this is our lecture time, and I am guilty of all of these things. And these are the things of like, what not to say. If your kiddo is saying like, I'm feeling really overwhelmed and stressed, Actually, I would like to hear if I'm your kiddo and I'm telling you school is a lot right now. I'm just feeling really overwhelmed and I don't know if I could do this. What would you say?
I don't know.
Just pop quiz. What was that? I won't
I
fail
can
you, I
share,
promise.
Yvonne.
Yeah,
So
please.
I will have my son write things down. So I will say, okay, let's write it down. What is bothering you? What needs to get done? What do you have? Let's write it down. And then we will start prioritizing. Okay, so you have all these lists of things you feel that you need to get done, you know, and you feel overwhelmed. Let's see say he puts a list of assignments. Okay, well, what's going to be due first, or what's going to take you the longest? And we kind of start to strategize that way, and then just start crossing things off one by one, so that you're like, okay, we're going to do this. And then it just, once you start completing those items, it starts to feel better. You know, you start to feel accomplished and better. And now he has one of the biggest whiteboards in his room, and I can go in there and I just see a list of things that need to get done, from cleaning his room to washing his car, to homework assignments, to paying his bills. Everything is in lists, and you can see that he's, you know, marking things down. So that's kind of what I'm teaching the boys to do,
That's awesome.
and something I
So
do
you get
as
a
well.
game plan. That's awesome.
I love
Yep.
that.
You have a
Solution
game plan.
focused.
Solution focus. I love that. That's so true. Anybody else? What would you say? Mom, Dad, I'm feeling just like school is so stressful and I just can't deal with it anymore. And just so you know, this list on the left-hand side are actual things that I've heard. I didn't make them up.
So
And I probably said
in the chat, it says, I tell my daughter to schedule breaks and breathe and walk away from the laptop and take a mental break.
love it.
I think what
Wow.
I've said, and this is like tough love on my part, where they're like, I can't do this. I'm like, well, you gotta like, so let's figure it out. Let's like, how are we going to get through this? Because not doing school isn't an option. Like, we've got it. So, and I think that like you have on here, what's not helpful, removing all stressors, because I think that that's a parent instinct to like, okay, what's hard? And like, I want to take that away. And that's actually with anxiety, not helpful at all. They do have to learn how to fight through anxiety and how to get through it, because yeah, like not going to school is not an option. Like not having a job someday is not an option. I mean, I guess if you win the lottery, maybe that can be an option, but you know, for most of us, that's not going to be an option.
You know, it's one of the biggest questions I'll get is like, how did you go from somebody with terrible anxiety who didn't really leave your home to being like a functioning adult? And it was like, well, it's a lot of support and pushing through really hard and scary things. There was never a day where I just woke up and felt better. It was like I had to fight through it and push through it. And that's why I always, like you said, I don't want to remove all the stressors of my kids. I want to teach them and show them how to get through them. Assuming anxiety is manipulation, it can feel that way, and sometimes it can be. But generally speaking, if your kid is telling you they're anxious, they're probably anxious. Not helpful to get angry, not others to, you know, in my like family, you know, I'll tell all the Mexican aunts and cousins like, oh, he's struggling with this, and spreading all the things, because that's just what we do. My mom told everyone about my problems. So I have to be mindful of that. There's one in the chat. Let's see. Another big one for parents is one-upping them. If you know what that means. If my kid's like, I have a lot of homework. You think homework's bad? I've got to pay the bills and I'm working 2 jobs. Like, I have it worse than you, like invalidating and minimizing their problems. I have a lot of students who will send me an email and they're like, Miss Gunter, I know there's kids with bigger problems than me, but I just was hoping that we could meet. And it's like, all the problems, big or small, they're important to you, they're important to me. And I think we can get caught up in like minimizing our own kiddos' issues, right? Like, oh, that's not that big of a deal compared to what could be happening. You should be grateful that you don't have it as bad as this. I get caught up in that because I deal with students who have very, very difficult issues. So that when my kids have an issue, I'm like, well, at least you have a house, those kind of things. Like I do minimize that. So, not reinforcing their anxiety is something that is very difficult about being somebody with anxiety, having kids with anxiety, is that I think I create anxiety for them a lot. My husband always says, like, you reinforce the anxiety. You're like showing them that you're like making them scared, you're just like you're projecting your own anxiety onto your kids. And I do that too. The list of things to not say, like, calm down, it's all in your head, stop feeling sorry for yourself. This is a big one that I hear all the time. You have everything you need. Your one job is school. I say that to kids and they light up like, how did you know that my mom said that? Like, it's so real and it's so true. It's like, you have all the things. You have one job and you can't even manage that. Like, what is going on? Stop thinking about it. All these things that are impossible to do. So this is our not what helpful list. So we're going to move on to our helpful list. I believe that's the next slide.
Before I go to the next slide, I guess I just wanted to point out, like, I hear a lot of these also from students that parents have said to them. And I don't think it's necessarily like parents aren't saying this to be malicious, right? Like, we're trying our best to like make our kids feel good. But unfortunately, what ends up happening when we say things like this is it really just invalidates what they're experiencing. So I understand this comes from a place of trying to help your kiddo feel better, even though it doesn't help them feel better.
Going to back to school night and understanding the expectations of the school year for each class gave me a huge appreciation as to all the work my student will face in the workload. I think it is worse than my workload. My responsibilities are repetitive. However, my daughters are always changing and challenging. I get stressed at back to school night, even just trying to get to the class. And then you find out all the things that they're expected to do and they just get it done, right? Or they don't. And it's a lot. It's stressful. And then they come home and they're tired and they're trying to play sports and do fun things. And it's just a lot. This slide, the why, if somebody says I'm anxious or I'm depressed and you ask them why, it actually creates more stress and anxiety, because sometimes with mental health issues, there is no why. And as parents, we are fixers. So we tend to ask that as the first question. Why? What's going on? And if the kid doesn't have an answer, it's like, I don't know, maybe there's something wrong with me. A lot of times there is no why. Sometimes it's biological. Sometimes it's just in our, family history. Sometimes they don't understand why yet. And it does make kiddos feel like they're a disappointment. Like, oh my gosh, if I don't even know why this is happening, like, I don't want to be a burden to my parent. It's very scary when I tell kids, like, I'm going to call home. I need to talk to your mom about this or whatever. They're like, mom's working. She's already stressed. I don't want to talk to her about it. I don't want her to be more stressed about me. And the reality is like, as a parent, you always know when something's up. Your instincts tell you that there's something wrong with your kiddo. And I always tell the kid, what you tell them is going to be worse than what they're imagining in their mind. So I think it's better to be totally honest, but just remembering, like, asking why, sometimes there is no answer. A lot of times too, parents will ask me, like, what did I do wrong? Or what should I have done differently? Or did I cause this? And not, that's not always how it works. So sometimes it just is. Next slide.
Also, I just want to point out, this is like my favorite question that you wrote on the bottom. So I want to read it because I feel like this is like a magic question. Is, do you want me to listen? Do you want me to give you advice? Or do you just want me to sit here and be upset with you? I feel like this question, you could literally ask it for like whatever your teen is experiencing. It's like the magic question. We should put a magnet on the wall.
It
I
works
love
for
that.
significant others. It works for colleagues. It's like the best question ever. Like have this like just in your brain and always ask it, and you're like, it's amazing.
Get it tattooed on myself.
My favorite, and when the kids are like, I just want you to be mad with me, and I'm like trying to pretend out how to pretend to be mad at mom too, and it's just funny. It's comical. What does this say?
Amy says, my kid is always super anxious, worried before an exam. I've told her to prepare early many times before, but she never changes her study habit. I don't really know what I can say when I see her stressed about an exam the next day. You should have started preparing for the test earlier, which makes what I really think in my mind. I don't really know what else to say or do to help her feel less stressed.
One of those like natural consequences.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, that's what I was like. That's something that she's just gonna like. She'll figure it out. But like, I mean, I think like, yeah, like she's stressed, and like let her live with the stress. And you can sympathize with the stress. I think maybe like if she's receptive to it, the next time she has a test, like if you know like ahead of time that the test is coming, like helping her map out and like time management and like map out like when she's going to study, like way before when the test is coming. Because yeah, like the morning of the test, that's not the time to do it. And so kind of looking towards next time and like having that be a learning experience. But you also might have somebody else give that advice to her, because I don't know, like with all of you, but I can tell my kids 1,001 times about how to do something. And then they'll get the exact same advice from somebody else. And it's like, oh, guess what I just heard? And I'm like, wow, I've told you that 1,000 times. But they don't listen to mom.
Well, parents say that all the time. They're like, I told her that 1,000,000 times. I'm like, I know, but there's some weird kid mom filter where it goes right out the other ear. You can fast forward this one, Amy, just for the sake of time, because I always want to show my little video. We'll send this out. Keep going.
Going.
Keep going.
Keep going.
Again, you can, yeah, this is perfect. You can always consult with us if you're feeling like your kiddo might be having some anxiety and you want us to like help you, we can screen them, we can talk to them, we can talk you through it. It does take a village. So remember, you're not in this alone, but how can we be helpful? Monitor their sleep, but you can't control it, right? Listen, don't demand perfection. Praise their efforts. I always say reach out to their doctor if you're starting to notice some things. I always want to clear anything medical before we start delving into mental health stuff, just in case there's an iron deficiency or a thyroid issue or any other condition that might have an impact on their mood. Model self-care yourself and healthy coping strategies and let them see how you do that. Encourage them. And just, I think ultimately, like, just listen. But don't take it personally if it's not you they want to talk to. This one is so hard for me still. It's so hard for me that at home I am not the one that they want to talk to, and that sucks. But it is what it is. So I have to remember that, as long as they're talking, I'm okay with it. Next slide. I think we might have our contact information on here.
Rápido.
What's that? Oh, okay. Do we have time for our 3-minute video?
No. But I'll send out the link.
Okay, cool. So again, if you need to consult with us, anxiety is huge. If they're talking about it, take it seriously, and we will work beside you to get them through it.
Yeah. Thank you. Hopefully, parents, you found this helpful. There's a lot more to this. I will send out the presentation and then the video that they wanted to share. Next week, we're not having a Zoom with the principal because next week is fall break. So no session next week. The following week, I'm not actually going to be there. I feel like I've missed more Zooms with the principal this year than I've ever missed in like my 6 years as principal here. And I apologize for that, but I'm at a conference in Philadelphia the week after we come back from the fall break. Or the week that we come back from the fall break, that's when I'm gone. But Mr. Campbell is going to sub for me and Coach Keesley is going to be here. And the topic is going to be all things athletics and sportsmanship. So if you have an athlete at Piedmont Hills, that is definitely one to tune in for. Yes, Virginia, thank you. The Parent Booster Club is also a great place to come together and discuss our struggles and get some feedback from other parents. That is a great resource. So we definitely aren't in this alone. Thank you guys all for being here today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. And if you don't have the week off, I hope you enjoy your kids having the week off. They don't drive you crazy, but like they'll be less stressed and hopefully you will enjoy that. So thank you guys. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.